Okay.
Hello everyone, and thank you for joining. Welcome to our 22nd ELTA Virtual University webinar towards a better use of the Coursebook. Since we are still waiting for some participants to join, about that time we can start some housekeeping and information about today's webinar. At the same time about the speaker and the content of our event. So my name is Dina Bourara and I'll be the moderator of today's webinar. I am a teacher trainer from Algeria and the ELTA Virtual University Compliance and Coordination Manager. If it is the first time to attend our events, ELTA Virtual University is a non-profit organization that was founded on February 2020, aiming at supporting students, teachers, and future teachers by delivering a variety of ELT topics. So before handing the mic over to the speaker and before the start, I would really like to start sharing some housekeeping item and information to cover this open discussion webinar. So for today's webinar, the recording is going to be available on demand. It's going to be a live session over, and certainly we are going to share the recording with all of the participants via emails. We are going to share it on our Facebook page that we are sharing its link on the chat thread right now. You can follow it to stay updated within our upcoming events. So next, we would really love to hear from you, and every participant is allowed to participate and offer an opinion, ask a question to the presenter during the webinar. So Amar is going to give some times after or within each slide in which someone of you would like to add a point, someone of you would like to share a collection of his or her own experience or to answer the presenter's question. So the most items that are really important during every event we do for ELTA Virtual University are that every participant needs to keep himself or herself on mute. So please make sure that you mute yourselves so that we do not get an echo. We cannot hear kind of that noise or wherever in a place you are in. At the same time, do not hesitate to answer or share your thoughts using the raising hand option and wait for the permission. If you don't have access to this option, that's absolutely fine. You can just type your question, answers, or comments on the chat thread, and I'll be sharing them during the webinar. Once again, no need to keep your mics and mute in order not to distract the participant or the speaker. No need also to open your cameras because we will be sharing the slides, and if you do so, we will be losing the sharing. Concerning certification, kindly note that only participants who attend the whole webinar will be awarded a certificate of attendance during the week before our next webinar. For that, please make sure that you check your name on the participant list. It should be written correctly in English letter. If you don't find it, I would like to invite you to log out and log in again using your correct full name as you wished it to be on your certificate. As I mentioned earlier, our webinar is towards a better use of the Coursebook. Many teachers in EFL settings face the challenge of dealing with mixed ability classes. In such settings, it can be difficult to maintain the learner's motivation and engagement. Smart adaptation of Coursebook is crucial to meet students' needs. So whether you are teaching kids, teens, or adults, our presenter, Mr. Belhadia Amr, will share with you the way how to address the 4 skills successfully in order to tailor your teaching and make it more challenging. I'm really delighted and honored to welcome Mr. Belhadia Amr, who is a researcher in applied linguistics. He is also a pedagogical consultant and a teacher trainer.
Thanks a lot for your kind invitation. Thank you.
Mr. Belhadia, I hand the mic over to you, and thank you. You can start.
Thank you very much. Thank you, ELTI, for your kind invitation. Let me first start by thanking the audience and welcoming everybody here. It's actually my pleasure to be among you today and to be offering this hand to teachers. Great. Well, as just introduced by yourself, today we are supposed to have a presentation about how to make a better use of the Coursebook. So just as this, I'd like to start by sharing with the audience the target outcomes of this session. So in order to include you with me and involve your presence in this session, I do believe from a metacognitive perspective that it is very, I would say, constructive to share the expected outcomes from the presentation the way any teacher actually is supposed to do with his learners. Great. So the first expectation from this presentation is triggering reflection on our own perception of the use of materials in relation to the Coursebook. The second point is raising awareness to the teaching knowledge that backs the adaptive skill of the teacher. That means we're not going to speak only about adaptation in its very simple form, but we will try to go beyond it and raise our own awareness about the teaching knowledge that is supposed to be behind. The third point, or my third expectation from this presentation, is about highlighting the interrelation of the different areas of performance, namely planning, assessing, managing the classroom, and adapting materials. Great. So just before we go into the thing, I'd like to ask some questions through which I'd like to know to what extent Coursebook use is a common concern for all of us. So my first statement or idea, or my question first is, have any of the following ideas ever crossed your mind? The first one is, these activities are difficult for the learners. This reading passage is too long. The topic of the reading passage is not appealing for the learners at all. This language form can be introduced better through a different context than this one. And this listening script does not cover the language point I want to target. So my question to your audience, have any of these ideas ever crossed your mind? Who can tell me? I hope my voice is being clear, Zineb.
Yes, in fact, your voice is so clear. Some people on the chat thread, they are saying that all of them are important to be, all of them. And we have someone else who wants to. I gave him the mic over for the one who raised his hand.
Yeah.
Yes, you can talk, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sumia. I am a training teacher. I started my training this year, and I found some activities in the coursework which are really abstruse for the secondary learning. And I found as well some reading passages which are too long. And as you know, the pedagogical time is not enough to cover all these reading passages.
Zineb, I don't know if I'm not hearing well or something like that. Would you like to sum it up in words if you have heard enough?
I think that Sarah Sumaya, you can please speak up because we cannot catch what you have already said. Please, go ahead.
Maybe she could type her comment. That will be okay.
Yes. Yes, will you please, Sarah? If you couldn't, since we couldn't hear you well, you can type your comment, and I will be sharing that with the speaker right now.
Yeah. Great. So, considering the I would say the comments of the audience, it's really clear enough, I would say, that all of us are in a way or another concerned with dealing with the course book and then having some of these common ideas, in fact, while dealing with the textbook. Great. Let's try to reflect on it, because as I said while sharing my expectations about this presentation, I said it's much more kind of an invitation for the audience to reflect on our own perception of the use of materials. So let's start trying to reflect on the situation. Great. My question is, what are those ideas about? If I wanted to ask you a very simple question, as simple as the following: what are those ideas about? What would you tell me? They concern what exactly? Zainab, any 2-3 answers will be okay.
Yes. In fact, we have already Sarah is saying, I started my training this year and I faced the problem of activities difficulty. They are not in accordance with their level. We are still waiting for, please, if you want to speak, you can just use the raising hand option, and I'm going to give you the permission to share your ideas and insights. Thank you.
Great.
Nirvin also she said concerning the learners' course books.
Great, it is. Actually, it is. It is about course books or simply about materials that we use. Great. So if they are about course books, that means they are about a suggested content. We say suggested content, and we mean by this our own course books, other extra course books. We speak about materials in general. So if these ideas cross your mind and they concern the course book, this means by asking or by having such ideas in mind, this means you are questioning the validity of this material. And when we speak about its validity, we're speaking about its validity in serving the learning objectives we have. So this is actually the interpretation of such ideas. Great.
Sorry to interrupt. Sundus Azzi is sharing her comment. She said they are concerned with content and not function. And Asali has said the ideas cover the different learning skills, grammar, listening, reading, for instance. And Ronnie asking a question: how can we bring this text alive in our classes?
Very important, very important. Thank you very much for all these valuable ideas. Actually, we're speaking the same. I mean, we're simply saying almost the same idea in quite different words. So it seems so crucial to be dealing with it, and it seems really that it is a common concern. Great. So this idea of bringing the content to life, getting things to be more valid, which means getting things to meet our learners' needs and then to serve or through serving the learning objectives. This requires an action, and this is what people are expecting actually, and this is what they want to do in such situations. The question is, what actions are we meant to take in this case?
So, what action are we meant to take in this case? If you want to share any answers for this, please use the raising hand option and please share it.
Yeah.
Share the on the chat thread.
I just led you back. I just led everybody back to the ideas or the statements. So just to help them to reflect on them, and then just tell me what might they do, what actions might they take with each one, with each situation.
So let me share with you. Jafar said it's simply adapting.
Yeah, it is adapting, sure, undoubtedly. So it is what we're supposed to do is adapting, undoubtedly. So we're going to take actions like then, for instance, for these activities which are difficult for the learners, what kind of action are we supposed to take?
So let me share with you Sarah's answers. We should adapt the coursebook to suit our learners' learning style and level. And Ronnie also suggested that I would suggest that role play adaptation of the text would fit into the agenda.
Nice. Great. This is what we are going to do. It is to adapt. I just wanted to guide things quite more practically. We will adapt undoubtedly. So what special actions are we going to take with each situation? I need just some examples, like for instance, the first situation, these activities are difficult for the learners. What action can we take in terms of adaptation? How are we going to adapt? How are we going to deal with it, for instance? What about the reading passage that is too long? What about the topic of the reading passage that is not appealing for the learners? What about the instruction that is ambiguous? What actions would the teacher take? Any examples of adaptive actions?
So Sundus sharing supplement other activities. And another participant said if we speak about validity of the book, it should be undergo with the standard criteria. And Sarah said that we can use easier activities.
Great.
And Jafar said we can sourcing. And Zainab said for long passages, we can provide information in smaller chunks, not the whole passage at once.
Great.
Another one said that we can use more vivid and the 21st century activities and shorten the text.
That is exactly adaptation in practice. So those actions actually interpret our way of validating the content. So as just they've been stated, so in given situation, I have just to select a part of that long text, for instance. I just can add a practice activity to prepare learners for the coming one, for the case of an activity that is difficult, because generally when the activity is difficult, that means it contains some parts which are making it quite complicated. Sometimes we need to split it into parts or to get another activity maybe before it that is supposed to prepare for the next one. I can replace the reading passage by another one that is more likely to interest the learners when the content is not appealing, when the text topic is not appealing. And I can replace the listening script by another one that includes the target language point for the case of the listening script that doesn't take or include the language point the teacher wants to target. I can also reformulate the instruction for the case of the instruction which is ambiguous. I just simply can reformulate the instruction in a clearer language. So this is actually, as the audience have just stated, it is about adapting. In this case, we're adapting. And when we speak about adapting practically, it is actually doing those things, taking those actions by which we mean to make or to offer more validity for the, I would say, for the content of the course book or the textbook. I just prefer to go from reality to the theoretical side. So instead of going from adaptation and what to do to adapt, I just meant by this by this direction, I mean by this up-down direction from the practical to the theoretical, to get teachers to know that in fact they are taking in their classrooms lots of important decisions that are actually very effective and fruitful, that sometimes they're not aware that what they're doing is really the right solution. So by this presentation or through this session, I'd like to raise teachers' awareness to the importance of decisions they are taking and to guide them to know how to identify the kind of actions they are taking. If we want to define adaptation, how would we do that according to our own actions, our own beliefs, our own way of dealing with inadequacies in the textbook? How would you define it?
I kindly recommend you to use the raising hand option if you want to share your ideas orally, and you can type on the chat thread, and I will be sharing them in a while. So one of the speakers, of the participant, Alexandra, the topic that the students are interested in are music and sport and fashion. Sarah saying that adaptation is the process of modifying and simplifying the content for the learners. Roni said that design the text adaptation according to the standards of the students. And that's all for the moment. I will be sharing others in case I will receive any.
Great, great. Well, it's all about that, in fact. It's all about, as you've just stated, it's all about simplifying, modifying, designing according to the standards. That is to say, leading things or reformulating things or enriching things. It depends on the right action to take. But the purpose remains the same, which is reaching or serving the learning objective in the best ways. Great. I'd like here at this very moment to share McGrath 2002 expression about teachers' action in the sense of adaptation. So as stated, teachers may select the material that will be used unchanged and reject either completely or partially sections of the material. They add extensions or further exploitation of the existing materials, and they replace components of the materials. So if you come to see this definition, you can see that our participants actually, right from the beginning, expressed actions of this kind when they were just being exposed, or when they were, simply exposed to situations expressing cases where the material was not really adequate for them. Great. So in the light of the previous definition and the participants' interventions, we simply can just recall the famous acronym SARS, and we say that in these cases we're supposed to select, to add, to reject, to supplement, and this is what almost all of us teachers do when confronting inadequacies with the material in general. So, and by which we surely mean selecting from the textbook activities or passages that you want your students to deal with, adding passages or activities which suit your students' needs and lessons objectives, rejecting passages or activities which do not serve you in reaching your learning objectives, and supplementing through finding extra more adequate activities than those it contains. And I highlighted here the expression extra more adequate, just to mean in a way or in another that sourcing or that adaptation is not supposed to be done for the simple sake of adapting, but it is going towards more adequacy and more efficiency. So up to now, this is what people generally and naturally do when they confront inadequacies with materials, as I said. So what we need actually to do, so as to get ourselves as much better, I would say, adapters, is to go beyond this and to try to know what backs good adaptation. So let's try to go deeper into the issue of adaptation. My question in this context is the following: does adaptation require special skills? Does it require any special skills? What do you think, dear audience? Are there any special skills that are required?
So one sharing his comment, let's say freely, and he said, "I don't like SAS."
Mm-hmm.
And another one said, "SAS sounds bad. It's like a COVID-19." And others said, "Yes, it does. It requires teachers searching and knowledge to have this adaptation."
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
also someone else, yes, of course, it requires special skills.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Great, great. Thank you very much for these valuable ideas. Actually, undoubtedly, it's about teacher's knowledge, as one of the audience has just stated. And as in terms of the word SARS and one's attitude towards the word, actually, there is also another acronym that is used parallelly, which is LARA, in fact. So since we knew about this adaptation, we know also the word LARA: leave, add, remove, and adapt. And there is SARS, but still, acronyms are just a kind of memory trick. It's just to get people to remember things. So if it went into SARS, teachers can create their own, and this is one of the expected roles, in fact, being reflective people. Great. So when it comes to what it requires, undoubtedly, being able actually to be able to adapt a textbook, you need first to have the I would say the quality of being able to evaluate the content, because adapters in fact are evaluators first, and evaluation itself requires a given knowledge, and this knowledge actually is not magic at all, and it's not anything of impossible. It's just a basic teaching knowledge with a right I would say teaching and pedagogical reflection. Great. So I heard.
Sorry.
Anyone else?
Yes, I want just to give the mic over Nirveen Hassan Salfat. She want to share her idea. Yes, you are
Yeah.
welcome, Nirveen.
Welcome.
Hello everyone, thank you for such a beautiful webinar and very useful too. I just have a comment concerning the special skills. Some of the skills that I think are essential are being able to analyze the issue or the problem, and then to evaluate, like you have said, and to also be able to solve the problem solving, and to be creative in the way that you solve it together with your learners. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Indeed. This is how it is, in fact. So it's about, if we come to summarize these words and these ideas about what it requires, in fact, we are going to come to the point that it requires kind of a teaching knowledge that can be described as the basic teaching knowledge, a basic teaching knowledge, because adaptation is an action, is about decision taking, about what to keep, what to leave, and so on and so forth. So it requires undoubtedly some skill and some basic knowledge so as to be safe and efficient, because it needs to be actually safe and efficient, being regarded as a surgery that the teacher is meant to operate on the material his or her has in hands. Great. Teaching knowledge, basic teaching knowledge seems to be kind of a keyword for our objective. So my question is as simple as this now. What does the basic teaching knowledge consist of, in your opinion?
So let me, Wahiba said that the teacher should have a critical thinking. And Joe said that teacher needs to know the student's needs properly.
Great. Anyone else?
Hello, can I speak?
Yes,
Sure.
Go ahead.
Just go on.
Sorry for interruption because I don't have the option of hand raising.
It's okay.
So about the knowledge, I think it needs to be, it's to know about the content, to know about pedagogy, and to know something about technology. So basic teaching knowledge is, revolves around these 3 points: having quite knowledge in the content the teacher is teaching, about pedagogy, what to teach, how to teach, and what tools, technological tools, are used in order to enforce or in order to strengthen those content and pedagogical, let's say, pedagogical aspect of the teaching. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very valuable. Thanks a lot for your participation.
Another answer from Zainab. First, the knowledge of the content, then also the knowledge about the learners who will be taught that content, so as to design your lessons to cater to the needs of the learners. Another one said that subject matter knowledge is crucial for that.
Sure.
Rajini answered student-centered content should be there. And Wahiba said the 4 skills and how to teach them. And another one said that a great knowledge of the curriculum. And Iman, it includes our knowledge in regard to learners' learning background, their level, and their interests.
Great.
Teachers should know how about critical thinking and skill, and must know how to enhance student skills.
Great. Very valuable and complementary ideas. If you see, things seem to fit each other a lot. Great. Let me just try to suggest kind of a little summary or vision about what a basic teaching knowledge consists of. I believe this contains almost all of the ideas which have been just suggested. So it's first about the theoretical knowledge, and when we speak about the theoretical knowledge, we speak about awareness of the adopted approach. When I speak about the approach, I'm speaking about the teaching approach, like the case of the CBA in our country. I speak about the syllabus design approach, whether it is functional or notional, or and this is about knowing about the approach behind the design of the textbook. And other theoretical knowledge like pedagogical and psychopedagogical and things that are meant to enable the teacher to be that decision taker on the basis of a solid theoretical background, which can really be at the I would say at the center of reflective thinking. So the second thing is about planning. As part of the basic teaching knowledge, a teacher is supposed to be a good planner, a planner with lots of schemas about how to plan things, how to deal with different skills, how to plan lessons with different, I would say, target objectives, and so on and so forth. And as part of the basic teaching knowledge, coursebook adaptation or material adaptation, which is something that is really, really essential because as you might just guess, not only from the discussion that we've just had, but still from what is known of the nature of textbooks, because a textbook can never be in any way a one size for all. So adaptation is actually part of the basic teaching knowledge a teacher is supposed to own. Classroom management as well. Part of the basic teaching knowledge, a teacher should own how to manage the class in terms of group, pairs, and so on and so forth, and including behavior as well. And then comes the point of assessment. A teacher is supposed to have some basic knowledge about how to assess, because we cannot be teaching without knowing how to assess, and we cannot teach without knowing how to assess, and we cannot assess without having taught properly. So if you can see, these are actually axes. I call them axes, and I call them also areas of performance. I call them areas of performance. So if we come to shed light on these areas of performance, we're going to see that they are really complementary to make the basic teaching knowledge, regardless of how much information, of how much knowledge in each area of performance the teacher can have. But it is about a basic knowledge into each of the areas of performance that can get the teacher to move on, to take steps forward in his teaching. Great. Now if we come to adaptation in practice, what information does it take a teacher to adapt efficiently or effectively, if you want? What information does it take a teacher? If the teacher is in front of a given material and he wants to, or he or she wants to take an action, an adaptive action, of course, what information do you think is necessary to be in hands just before starting to adapt? Information about the lesson, because when we speak about adaptation, we speak generally about each lesson apart. What information does it take a teacher to adapt efficiently?
So here, sorry, I couldn't read the name, but a participant suggests that all required cognitive knowledge for creating effective teaching and learning environments. Narja said a teacher has to have full command of the subject he is or she is teaching.
Sure.
Sabrina said, if you imagine the lesson is like a journey, then the lesson plan is like a map.
Sure.
Wahiba posed the idea of objectives and aims that should be well stated. And Sarah, learner's intellectual level, learning style, multiple intelligences, preferences, level of the thinking, all these should be known by the teacher.
Undoubtedly, very valuable. Actually, in terms of my vision, information that a teacher needs to have so as to adapt safely and efficiently, and I always actually say safely when I speak about adaptation. So as I told you, I perceive it, in fact, like a surgery that we are supposed to do. So I speak about safety and efficiency at the same time when I speak about adaptation. So I believe that what it takes as information is the lesson procedure, to mean that the teacher is supposed to know how to proceed. And here I'm speaking about kind of a given level of self-efficacy in terms of proceeding. That means when I speak about self-efficacy, I speak about that belief of the person, of him or herself being really able to do something in a good way. So the teacher need to be knowledgeable about how to proceed, depending on the kind of lessons he's going to tackle. A teacher should have, as one of the participants has just stated, the learning objective of the lesson. At the same time, I can say should know how to set valid learning objectives for the lessons. The teacher should also have in hands the objective of the sequence or the unit. And here I say the sequence because it depends on the textbook or the course books used. Some of them use sequences as set of lessons or divide the groups of lessons into, or sets of lessons into sequences. Other books, like the high school ones, for instance, use units. So I'm just saying sequence or unit because we can never know what kind of book the teacher is using regarding the variety of participants. So I can say the teacher should also, before proceeding to adaptation, the teacher should know the objective of the sequence or the unit, I mean, to identify it and to set it at the same time. The third or the fourth point is assessment strategies. So the teacher is supposed to be knowledgeable about how to assess, what to assess, and mainly in relation to his way of doing. Great. Let's see. Excuse me. Excuse me. Do you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Okay, just a moment. It's about the PC.
Yeah, so I would be sharing some information. If you would like to add a comment orally, you can use the raising option, and we want to hear from you. Rooney said, sustain the interest of the students with intermediate activities and progress. Mm-hmm. And another one said, the information is about the learner learning background. Rajini said the designing of the textbook has to be learner-oriented than teacher-centered. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you very much. So we can move forward, actually. So I hope the sharing is okay up to now.
Yes, in fact, it is. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Great. So starting by the first point, which is lesson procedure, because if you see again here, talking about about information that the teacher should have in hands so as to tackle adaptation efficiently, we said lesson procedure, valid objectives, and objectives of sequences or of the sequence and the unit, and assessment strategies. Great. Going into detail of these things, look at lesson procedure, for instance. My simple question is, what are the key terms a lesson plan is supposed to contain? We're trying to survey some of the key vocabulary related to planning, related to teaching knowledge in general into a given order. So what are the key terms a lesson plan is supposed to contain? No order is necessary, just any keywords you believe a lesson plan should contain.
I hand the mic over for Huda. You can share your insights. Go ahead, please.
Hello, everyone. I'm Bint Huda Bahrani, a teacher from Kuwait. I think the main keywords that we can think about when we are talking about the procedures or lesson procedures are warm-up, wrap-up, these some of them.
Interesting. Very interesting. Any other comments about any keywords that are supposed to be in a lesson plan?
I hand the mic over. Nirveen, you can share what you want. Yes, go ahead, please.
I think first we should have an idea about our objectives for this lesson, or sometimes they are called competencies. What do I want my learners to achieve during this lesson? After that comes the procedure, of course, pre, while, and post activities. What am I going to do with them? Is it group work or a presentation or introducing new vocabulary? And by the end of the lesson plan, it should have an evaluation for myself, for my learners, and how the lesson went. Maybe there is a technical problem, anything like that, so that I can avoid it next time.
Nice, nice, very interesting. Thank you very much. Very interesting.
Let's hear also from Samia Asili.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, I'm Samia Asali from Algiers.
Nice to meet you.
I'd like to talk about the plans. Before planning any lesson, you must have you must set all the objectives that you must achieve at the end. Each activity you should create it or devise it, having an objective in mind, or we cannot finish our lesson.
Sure, indeed.
It's my point of view.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Indeed. You're welcome. Thank you very much. Indeed.
Okay, thank you.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Hello? Excuse me, I don't have this option of hand raising, so I just deactivated my microphone and I want to participate in this question.
It's okay, it's okay.
Thank you. Well, a lesson plan should contain basically, and first of all, the learning objective. So we should know where or what are we going to achieve by the end of this lesson. Mainly the learner, what the learners will be able to do or to learn by the end of this lesson.
Great.
Secondly, we need to include the procedure, of course, the different stages, how we are going to achieve these this objective, and also for the teacher, we need to have something, the objective of the teacher. The big one is for the learner. What will the learner be able to achieve by the end of the lesson? But also the teacher should include something about him, what he intends to do this, for example, for this lesson, to achieve with the learners for this lesson. Example, also the different, we should include the timing, the time for each step. The framework also. We have also the language focus.
Perfect.
Teacher, learners, learners, or learners alone, etc. And also we need to include the learning styles, the VAC, visual, and the learning or the multiple intelligences. These things are very important and key elements in any lesson plan. I would include also possible what I call difficulties. I have to assume, or I would rather say predict anything that the different or the possible difficulties my learners would encounter during given this lesson, and how I'm going to overcome this difficulty.
Great.
Yes, I can also include extra activities, etc. Thank you very much for listening.
Right, you're welcome. Thank you very much for your valuable ideas. Thank you very much.
If you don't mind, Mr. Belhadia, we would like to hear also from Mungia or Mungia Al-Abid. Sorry if I mispronounce the name. Yes, you can go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Mungia Al-Abid from Tunisia.
You're welcome.
Welcome. Thank you very much. Just I want to add some ideas to my colleagues what they have said. I think that the first thing that to take into consideration while just planning a lesson is the objectives that we are going to reach in our lesson. Then second step is to take into consideration our learners' needs. It depends on the level, on the type of learners. Okay, so you are the teacher and you know what are the learners' needs, so you should take that into consideration also. I think that there's another important concept that we should here refer to is the material that we are going to use in our just in presenting our lesson. What materials means are there any listeners? Are we going to use, for example, project or dialogues, or what are types of materials that we are going to use in our lesson? And then I think time management is a very important concept here, because you should know how to plan your lesson, take into consideration the time you're going to give to warming up, to presentation, to the students for working in groups or something, or in pairs, and to evaluation at the end of the lesson. I think these are important concepts that we should take into consideration while planning our lesson.
Sure, undoubtedly. Thank you very much for these valuable ideas, for all these valuable ideas. Actually, as you might remark, all of us meet actually in some very important points. Talking about keywords that a lesson plan is supposed to contain, in addition to what you've just stated, we can simply survey them as the target skill or skills, as many of them have just stated, the target competencies, the grammar points or language points in general, vocabulary, sounds, values, attitudes, and cross-curricular competencies. Actually, planning a lesson is kind of a challenge of putting these key concepts into the right places. It's kind of a puzzle where we are supposed to put all these concepts somewhere onto our plan, and at the same time it's about how much to take of each of them. So which skill am I targeting? How do I relate skill to another? What competencies am I targeting? Is it about interpreting? Is it about producing? Or is it about interacting? And then grammar, what about it? What is it? Where should I put it? How should I deal with it? And vocabulary as well. What about keywords? What about pre-teaching? What about using? What about reinvesting? The same thing is to be said about sounds, values, attitudes, and cross-curricular competencies, of course. So if in terms of procedure, I can also point out to the following example. For instance, when speaking about a procedure in which the teacher believes, I can speak about something like this one, for instance. Believing in a process, a lesson process that goes from input, that can be a reading passage or lesson script, depending on the target skill, and going through grammar, vocabulary and sounds as language resources, moving to values and attitudes and cross-curricular competencies or skills, which are normally, and when I speak about values and attitudes, which are supposed to be actually into the input and that are supposed to be to appear in our output, and then to go finally to the output, which is a partial integration. The plan I'm sharing with you right now is kind of one of the very different perceptions, actually, and this is the way I perceive it. One of kind of a basic skeleton of a lesson plan, that can I would say offer me the power, an adaptive power. It is kind of a skeleton of a lesson plan that I can fill with whatever knowledge I would like to deal with and whatever language content I'd like to transfer to the learners, while guaranteeing an input and an output. An input that is supposed to take the role of an expert text, and an output that is supposed to be the produced model. And if you can see here, It can look like kind of a template for a lesson plan where you have a space for the input, which can be reading. If your input is a reading passage, if your target skill is reading, and it can be a listening script. If your target skill is the listening skill, and if you can go to the end of the skeleton, you're going to see the output, which is supposed to be very related to the input. So if my input is reading, then my output is supposed to be writing. So if I'm dealing with reading here, it means that this is a lesson through which I target reading and writing. If it is about if I'm targeting listening in the output, if I'm targeting speaking in the output, that means I'll be targeting listening in the input. I will also include the necessary grammar points into the grammar phase. In terms of vocabulary, I can simply introduce it as part of the in the pre-reading phase in the form of pre-teaching. Then I will lead my learners to reinvest them in the output. Okay, I'm just being quite quick about this because this is not our point, but this is actually just a sample to make you know what I meant by the word procedure, what I meant by the expression self-efficacy in terms of proceeding, self-efficacy in terms of proceeding. Do we as teachers have a strong belief about a given schema to be the right one for us to deal with almost any language content, while being able to include all the necessary grammar, I would say language tools, including grammar, vocabulary, sounds, and so on and so forth, for to enable the learner to be able to produce. If you can see at the end, and this is a skeleton for a lesson plan on one lesson, as I said, depending on depends what number of sessions the lesson might take, but I'm speaking about a skeleton of one lesson. If you can see at the end, there is what we call output, and I wrote between the brackets partial integration. And if I said partial integration, that's because I believe that the integration of each lesson is supposed to be partial as compared to the general or to the final output or final production targeted by the whole unit or the whole sequence. Great. Lessons learning objective. Going a bit into detail, but not really so deep. What makes a learning objective valid then? Many of you mentioned the learning objective. What is supposed to make a learning objective valid? And if you remark, I speak a lot about efficiency, safety, and validity, because when it comes to actions, anybody can take any action, whether it is about adaptation or planning, but the question is about efficiency. That's why I've always been saying to teachers, almost anybody can teach, but only good ones can make learning happen. So I speak about efficiency, about quality of the product. And here is my question. What makes a learning objective valid? In your opinion, guys?
So, Sarah Sumaya, the mic is over to you. Unmute yourself and you can share your answer. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I think that a smart objective should be smart.
Sorry, we can't hear you, lady.
Yes, Sarah, could you please speak up so that we can hear you?
Hello, can you hear me now?
Quietly, yes, speak up much more. Yeah?
Much louder, please.
Louder. Sorry, Sarah, we don't hear you. We couldn't hear you properly. You can type your comment. I will be sharing it with. I will be sharing it. Huda Hussein Ibrahim Ali. Would you please share your idea? Thank you.
Yes, I think that the any lesson objectives should be smart in a way like smart refers to being very specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timing. This is what I want to say.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Yes,
Any other
Sarah.
comments?
Yes, Sarah. I hope that the problem of your voice is solved. Yes, you can go ahead, please.
As Huda said, the objective must be smart.
She said smart. This is what I heard, in fact.
Perfect, yeah. Sorry, Sarah. Type your comment on the chat thread. I will be sharing it. Yes, go ahead, please, Mr. Belhadia.
Thank you very much, and thank you for Sarah too, and for the ideas that I've just received. Actually, I heard kind of saying, I heard Sarah saying something like smart, and I like the previous participant, and this is, I do totally agree with them. When we speak about the objective, learning objectives, undoubtedly the basic thing about it is being smart, like any objective in life, in fact. When we speak about its specificity, being measurable at the same time, achievable, relevant, and time-bound, and this is something almost all of us agree on. In addition to this smart aspect of the objective, it should be targeting an observable learning behavior. And here we are speaking about how to formulate the objective, because validity is not only about that, but it's also about how to formulate it. So it should be smarter, as we have just confirmed, and at the same time it should target an observable learning behavior. Why observable learning behavior? Because we're not supposed to ask about learning, we're not supposed to ask about understanding, we're supposed to check learning, we're supposed to check learning, to check understanding, and that can only be done through evaluation tasks or activities, as it has been stated by one of the participants previously. Now, the second point is mentioning the necessary language resources. If my objective can be specific enough when it mentions the necessary language resources for that task that I want learners to perform in order to demonstrate learning. Because as I said in the first point, it should target an observable learning behavior. However, this behavior, in fact, requires a necessary, I can say, language resources or language tools in order to make it realizable. So the objective, in order to make the objective, as I said, valid, I need to be targeting that behavior, and at the same time I should mention those resources that are supposed to be deployed so as to realize the behavior, and at the same time it should relate to the objective of the unit or the sequence. And this is also very important, because as I've just stated in the previous slide, when I spoke about the procedure, we have the lessons output, which is mentioned as partial integration. That is partial integration because the final integration is the project work or the final production targeted by the unit. It depends on the course book, it depends on the educational system, it depends on the teaching context, and so on and so forth. But in general, those I would say those sets of lessons divided or gathered into units or sequences are supposed to have a target final production that is supposed to be a final integration which is supposed to be built up on the basis of partial integrations that are supposed to be the output of each lesson. Great. So the objective of the unit or of the sequence. Yeah. Yes.
Before we move, just I want to share Salah's comments. Learning objective should be well written, clearly describe learning outcomes, and students are oriented and result in an observable product. We need students to be engaged, so our learning objective need to relate to the student.
Perfect. This has just summarized that what we've been stating in different words. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I did also mention the objective of the unit or the sequence, and I'm still using unit or sequence, given trying to cover as much possible of the cases. So how can you describe the objective of the lesson in relation to the lessons one? If we want to describe it, if you want to describe the objective of the unit or of the sequence in relation to the lessons one, what would you say about it? How would we describe it? If we have to say, or if we had to say a word about the objective of the sequence or of the unit in relation to the lessons one, how would you compare it, or how would you describe it?
I can hand the mic over to Naveen. She has something to say.
Yeah, please, Naveen.
Well, I think of the unit as the whole picture and the lesson as a part of the picture. So they should be relevant, okay, and connected in a way that's achievable to both the learners and the teacher. They can imagine the connection between both, okay, in terms of the whole picture and part of the whole.
Great. That's it. It's kind of a whole and a part, kind of a puzzle with parts, a picture and parts. Yeah. Perfect. Zainab, any other comments about it?
Not for the moment.
Great.
So Sarah, maybe she wants to speak again, but I guess she couldn't. What do you say, Sarah? Can you share something? I think that she's struggling with the problem of the sound again, so I'll be sharing any comments if I have any.
Yeah, thank you. Please, Sarah, you still can type, and it would be our pleasure to hear from you and to answer you at the same time. Great.
Hello, can I talk? I tried to raise my hand, but I think that you couldn't.
Sure, undoubtedly. Just go on.
Okay, so it's Sundus Azi again. So the relation to how can I describe the objectives? Yeah, I can say that we have cognitive objectives, we have psychomotor, and we have socio-affective. Means they are related to the skills, to the knowledge, and to the attitudes of the learners.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sanders. Thank you very much. So this is, in fact, in general, how the objective of the lesson relates to the one of the unit, and the opposite, and vice versa. So it's just kind of trying to kind of set the picture. We're going to try to order the parts of the puzzle. We're trying to I would say reorder our teaching knowledge and our perceptions about everything into a whole and organized picture of the teacher's profile, the teacher who is supposed to be able to adapt because he has I would say a sufficient basic teaching knowledge. So in terms of relation between the two objectives, it is as you've just stated, guys, it's about the picture, the partial picture from the total picture, from the whole. It is also, as Sundus stated, and I can describe or I can add to what you've just stated that the objective or the unit's objective or the sequence objective is kind of a final production. And of course, it depends on the context in which you teach. It can be a project in project pedagogy context. It is a report in some other spaces. It is a presentation and the different skies and so on and so forth. In terms of details, the objective of the sequence or unit works directly the theme. It mentions the theme. It can be something like students are supposed to write and speak in that or this theme, stating this and that, talking about this and that, reflecting this and that attitude toward this and that, and believing and manifesting this and that value, and so on and so forth. In addition to that, it should of course include all the necessary language resources, because if each lesson contains, or each lesson's objective is meant to show the necessary language tools or language, I would say, material that is, or resources that are meant to be used by the learner to be able to produce what he or she was unable to produce at the, in terms of entry profile. Undoubtedly, the unit or sequence objective is supposed to contain almost all those language points and language, or I would say, language resources that are supposed to be deployed by the learner at the end of the unit, so as to make that final production proper and good. And at the same time, the objective of the unit is meant to include also, or to mention, what we call modes of sharing. And when we speak about modes of sharing, we simply mean whether it is going to be project, report, as I said, presentation, plays, or anything of the kind. It can also be kind of documentaries, digital products in cases where we want to include learners or to introduce more technology into learners' work. So this is it. The fourth point that I spoke about is assessment in accordance with the teaching context. Assessment in accordance with the teaching context. My question is, what do you know about assessment? In very, very, very few words, what do you know about assessment? What is it for you? Any concept, any word that relates to assessment that you know can serve as an answer?
So I'll be sharing some insights from the participants. Someone said that assessment is progressive. Someone else said assessment is objective. Sarah said assessment is the evaluation of the learning and the teaching and learning of the learners. Rajini said guiding the learning process. Zainab said checking whether students have achieved those objectives or not. To know the progress of the child. Jafar said judgmental evaluation. Narja said systematic process of documenting and using empirical data on knowledge. Huda said learning goals can be assessed. Iman said making judgments about one's performance. And we have Rajini also said feedback to your teaching effectiveness.
Thank you very much.
Also, we can have Sundus. Maybe she's raising her hand to. Maybe she has something to share with us. Yes, Sundus, go ahead.
Yes, thank you to give me the floor. So for me, assessment is evaluating the present situation and see how to deal with it, there are some weaknesses, how to remedy, if there are strengths, so how to make it more challenging. It is, in general, you can say it is assessing for learning and assessing about learning. So thank you to give me the chance to talk again. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Sundus. That's really, it's a pleasure. Zainab, any other comment?
We have also Nirveen Hussein Safwat. Maybe she wants to share something. The mic is yours, please.
Thank you. Now, assessment, I will divide it into 3 sections. I evaluate my performance during the lesson. Was I fully aware of my objectives, and did I use the correct procedure, activities? This is as for me for further feedback. The second part is concerning the learners and how did they respond to my activities, and did they achieve progress regarding the objectives? Have they a full picture of the vocabulary and they know it very well, or the grammar, or whatever objectives I have in mind. And the third element is concerning time. Was time enough for my lesson plan and my objectives? Of course, all of this serve one purpose, that I improve my lesson plans in the future. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
We have also Huda Hussein Ibrahim. Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes, thank you for allowing me to take this opportunity. For me, assessment is two types. We can say it's summative assessment and formative assessment. As for summative assessment, it's somehow related to the end of the course or the end of the semester or the end of the year, if we want to have an idea about students' performance. As for ongoing assessment, it's related to the daily lessons. During the daily lessons themselves, I can get feedback from the students. Based on this feedback, I can learn about students' performance, what things they are good at, what things they need to be better at later on, and also I can modify my teaching techniques in order to meet students' requirements for future teaching. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Valuable, so valuable. Thank you very much.
Before we move, please, I want to share some from the chat thread. We have one said to make judgment about student progress, and Sarah said it is of two types, formative and summative. Another one said that assessment is not just a final test. Munjia said that there are two types, formative and summative assessments. And Huda said a test for understanding. Camellia, assessment of teaching. Rhea, sorry if I mispronounced the name, a test of understanding. Also, Huda said determine the extent to which students have met the lesson learning goals. And Ismail said assessment involves the use of empirical data on students' learning to refine programs and improve student learning. Zainab said it helps to get a feedback about our teaching practices. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Very valuable comments. All of them actually point to the right direction. Maybe me too, I can add my word about it. Assessment is very important. It is kind of a spirit of one's practice. Actually, it's not only about teaching, but it is about all life activities, in fact. And when we come to teaching, it's about assessing, as our dear participants have just stated, it's about assessing oneself first, one's own performance, assessing learners' learning, learners' performance, assessing learners' strategic learning behavior, assessing the teacher's strategic behavior as well. It's also about assessing the material, and this is what brought us here actually, assessing the quality, validity of the material, assessing attitudes, our own attitudes towards the surrounding, towards the subject matter, towards the content that we have in hand, assessing students' attitudes towards the social cultural context. So when we speak about assessment, we speak about it as the result of a very important aspect the modern teacher should be characterized with, which is reflection, because today's teacher is meant to be reflective. He or she is supposed to reflect for action, in action, and on action. This three-dimension reflection is or means the following. He or she is supposed to reflect for action. That means to plan, to reflect for the action before taking it, the teaching action before taking it. That is to say, to plan. I'm not speaking about only a lesson. I speak about the lesson. I speak about the task. I speak about the assessment itself. Any action is meant to be reflected for. That means prepared. This teacher is meant also to reflect in action. And when I speak about reflection in action, I speak about that aspect of being able to analyze at the present time of presentation, to be able to reflect on what you are doing and to be free from all paradigms and to get yourself able to take any decisions that serve learning. That means going quiet, being ready to go quite unfaithful to the plan, to the extent that you keep yourself always ready to take any, and I'm saying any necessary decision that is meant to lead you faster and better to your learning objective. The third dimension of this reflection I'm speaking about, which is the essence of assessment, as I said, is to reflect on action. And when I speak about reflection on action, I'm speaking about reflecting on actions already taken. So if it's a lesson that has just been done, as a teacher, I'm supposed to reflect on the way I've been dealing with things, on the way I've been covering the content of my plan, and to consider all the remarks that I mentioned on the remarks column on my lesson plan about what went well, what didn't go well, and what I really would like to perform differently. So again, assessment is at the core part, I would say, of the teaching profession, because it is simply the clearest manifestation of teachers' reflectiveness. And I repeat it again: reflection for action, in action, and on action. So I do simply agree with you guys on all what you've said about assessment. Speaking about now assessment in relation to adaptation. Why we adapt? Why we adapt? What are we supposed to consider in terms of assessment? I'm trying to link. Zainab?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
I think that one of the participant, please put your mics on mute so that you don't distract the speaker, please.
It's very okay. It's very okay up to now.
Okay. Go ahead.
Great.
Just go ahead.
Zainab, just a second. My last question was, in terms of adaptation, or adaptation, sorry, while adapting, what are we supposed to consider in terms of assessment? Because if you see what we're trying to do in this session, we're trying to link all our teaching knowledge to adaptation so as to make it all useful to a better adaptation. Now we are dealing with assessment, and I would like to ask, what are we supposed to consider in terms of assessment while adapting?
So
listening.
We have Ibru, sorry, Ibru Yamartise, sorry if I misspell your name. The mic is over to you. I see you raising your hands. You want to share something? So you are welcome. Go ahead. So if you don't hear me or you couldn't, we have also Huda Hussein Ibrahimi. And you can share.
I think things we should adapt during the teaching and learning process is our teaching techniques as teachers to meet students' requirements for better performance. And also we have to adapt the course book or the textbook itself to meet our daily teaching. For example, if we have a very difficult reading text for the students, we can adapt it, make it simpler for them, just to make them understand this reading. Mm-hmm. This is what I got.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Also, we have, I hand the mic over to you again. I couldn't.
Thank you.
Would you please, Huda, would you please unmute yourself, please? We have this one who wants to share, Ibru Yamatashi. Yes, if
Well,
you hear me, you can just unmute yourself and share your idea with us. If not, I'm gonna share in some of the some answers from Sabrina. Assessment is the ongoing process of gathering, analyzing, and reflecting on evidence to make informed and consider just judgment to improve future students' learning. Wahiba said the material used are important. So I think that's all. I hand the mic over to you again. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank guys for your.
Hello?
Uh-huh.
Hello? Can I add something?
Yeah, sure.
Saliha, sorry, I don't have that option for raising my hand,
It's okay.
neither for commenting. Yes. So in order to link adaptation with assessment, I think that before we adapt, we go into action. Into adapting, we need to reflect on our teaching. This is one type of assessment.
Thank you
I
very
mean,
much.
when we reflect on our teaching, we try to gather information, we try to see what works, what doesn't work, and so on and so forth. And then we will reflect in action, which means when we are teaching, we try to make our, let's say, formative assessment during class assessment, during. So this is linked to, so in order to be able to adapt, we need to have some feedback from reflection in action. And then all this, when we adapt and when we set our, let's say, new items and new materials that suit our students, here we are reflecting for action. So we are, I mean, all what we did is for acting later on and for teaching better. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That is actually at the heart of the issue. Thank you very much. Great. When adapting, as I just stated before, actually, what we're trying to do again is that we want to drain our teaching knowledge in general in the different areas of performance, starting from lesson planning through going through adaptation, assessment, classroom management, and so on and so forth, how to drain it so as to make it at the service of effective and efficient adaptation. So when it comes to assessment, effective adaptation requires awareness of the following. The first thing is types of assessment. So adapters are meant to be aware of the fact
So in waiting Mr. Bilhadia to back, do you hear me, Mr. Bilhadia? So one, Sharon, we shouldn't be slaves of the Coursebook. We should be creative. Another one, another one said that the assessment is ongoing as a process of gathering, analyzing, and reflecting on the evidence to make informed and consider judgment to improve future students' learning. Mr. Bilhadia, can you hear me? In waiting to have Mr. Bilhadia again, maybe a technical problems that will happen. Let me remind you that if you don't write your correct name as you wish to be on your certificate, please write it correctly using English letters so that we will be able to offer you the awarded certificate.
Zainab, is it okay?
Yes, okay.
Thank you. It was a kind of technical problem that I could not really understand. It's the first time I see this.
Yes,
so
that's fine.
I'm
that's
sorry
fine.
I'm sorry for the cut. So we're not actually far from the last slide. What about the Cheryl? Is it okay?
Not yet.
Not yet. Great. Let me do it then. And let me see. And this is it. Great. So I hope it's okay right now.
Yes, in fact, yes, that's fine. Great.
Good. So I'm sorry, guys, again. So as I said, when we speak about assessment in relation to adaptation, actually effective adaptation requires awareness of the following points. I said, first, types of assessment. The adapters know that assessment can be diagnostic, it can be formative, and it can be summative as well. It can be diagnostic at the beginning of a grade or school year. It can also be diagnostic at the beginning of a session, for instance, whenever you want to assess the schemata. I mean, not to activate, just before activating schemata, if you want to, for instance, assess the prerequisites, mainly when they are necessary to the new target knowledge. It can be also formative when it is an ongoing process throughout the sessions and throughout the teaching day by day. And this is what some of the participants pointed to. And it can be also summative when it is about judging performance, about judging learning, and so on. It can be marked, or it can be sometimes just evaluated in different feedback techniques. But still, it can be, as I said, either diagnostic, either formative, or summative. So this, I mean, the teacher's awareness of the types of assessment and how to deploy each of them in relation to the learning objectives is a basic, is part of the basic teaching knowledge that a teacher needs to own so as to be able to adapt. The second part, and it concerns much more official teaching contexts like schools and so on and so forth. It is about the official exam. So an adapter should be aware of the typology of instructions. That is to say, it is quite, I would say, obligatory, I can say, if I may allow myself, to go through the official exam guide, like the case in Algeria, as we provide teachers with BOM guide and baccalaureate guide, which include the possible instructions in official exams. So it's quite very necessary for the teacher to be aware of those guides, because they are supposed to give him an idea about the typology of instructions. And then when it comes to decision taking in terms of content management, content adaptation, it is very important for the teacher to include as much instructions as possible from official exams, so as to get learners not only perform the target activities, but at the same time to get them acquainted with official exams instructions. And I believe that this is one of the points that I could raise at a given moment when I was about to evaluate the ELT in a given field, actually, when I was asked to evaluate. And one of the points that I could really raise was the huge, I would say, distance between coursebook instructions and official exams instructions, kind of getting learners trained on something and then being tested on something else. So it is very easy to be knowledgeable about the kind of instructions included in exams, mainly stakeholders offer practitioners call. I need also to know from that guide and from the different testing, official testing situations, how skills are being evaluated. And on the light of the way skills are being evaluated in exams, in official exams, I'm supposed to adapt my way of dealing with the skills and evaluating them. So as again, to get learners acquainted to the way they are going to be tested in terms of skills as well. And the same thing is to be said about the soft skills, including grammar, sounds, and vocabulary and things. I believe that students need to be, I would say, trained on official exam-like instructions and activities, not only to get them, as I told you, practice the target tasks or the target structures and so on and so forth, but also to get them at least acquainted with these instructions, not to get the learners facing a comprehension activity in official exams, and this comprehension activity actually is about instructions of different grammar and sub-skills activities. And the last point is resources deployment. So I gotta get sure of the way official exams make deployment of language resources that I'm teaching, or they've been teaching my students. So I believe that adaptation in terms of assessment requires this, I believe, simple, but at the same time, very basic and essential knowledge, by which I meant simply types of assessment and official exam design. So up to now, we came to the, this was our last, in fact, slide. And the teacher who believes in a procedure, who believes in an output and an input that leads to an output, who believes in reflectiveness and resources deployment, I suggest an integration station, and I tell you and invite you to integrate some of what we've been in. So my task reads as follows. Suppose whose theme is life in the past. Zainab, is it okay for the sound?
Yes, just go ahead.
Thank you very much. So supposing that as part of a unit or a sequence whose theme is life in the past, you had to make your learners able to write about past events, knowing that they did not deal with past tenses previously. What would your lesson's objective be like? What are the main parts of your lesson plan? What are the main parts of your lesson plan? And what would you do if you intended to introduce more technology into your performance of the same lesson? What would you do if you intended to introduce more technology into your performance of the same lesson? Actually, this is an invitation for you to try to integrate what you've been deploying or what you've been storming about your ideas, about your teaching knowledge. Time is not going to allow us to share any of your works here. Still, you can make any. I mean, you can type any of your answers somewhere. You can share it with the organizers of ELTA, ELTA organizers, and I can get a look on it. It will be my pleasure again to get a look on your products. And I don't know if these 2 minutes are enough for me and you to open the discussion for any other questions. Thank you, Zainab.
Thank you. I think we can have some. I can think that we can have some participant to share quickly their insights.
That would be great then.
Yeah. So maybe Nirveen or Sundus or Sarah, you are raising your hands, so you want to share something, I guess?
Yes, as for the lessons objectives, our unit is life in the past. So I'm going to say describe life in the past in the immediate environment of the students. If they're living, for example, in Europe, I would say to them, describe life in the past in Europe or in the country itself. Then use the past tense correctly. After that, I'm going to say, for example, this is for the grammar. Yes, make correct sentences using the newly learned lexical items concerning the past. Thank you.
That's great. That's great. So it's about the tense, it's about the necessary language tools, and it's about the output, and it is about also the target behavior or the task that is supposed to be performed by the learner so as to show that learning took place. Zainab, any other intervention?
Yes, so in fact,
Okay,
that is
I'm here,
one.
so it's Sundus.
Okay,
Yeah,
yes, go
it's
ahead, Sundus.
Yeah. So for the objective, that will be by the end of the lesson, learners would be able to write or to talk about past events chronologically, yes, chronological order using past tenses, regular and irregular verbs. So for the past of the lesson, so as Mr. Belhadia showed us before, so we need an input, and in the input can be a reading text with the past, from which students underline or circle the verbs, and also see how the chronology of the story order is set. So deducing this, studying it inductively, the grammar lesson inductively, then practicing bits in other contexts, and at the end they would be able to narrate an event that happened to them in the past with the correct vocabulary and verb tenses and using the order chronologically. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sundus.
Thank you
very much. That is absolutely a clear, I would say, procedure to which you adhere in such a successful way that shows what I can call readiness to adapt in a very, I would say, organized way. So the way you just imagine the fact shows that you shows your readiness, in fact, to adapt any content to the steps that you've been just describing, getting an input related to the theme, going through comprehension, highlighting the grammar point, going into it through presentation, isolation, analysis, and then practice, and then moving back from practice to the output, which is supposed to be the integration, the partial integration part, of the lesson, where the learners are supposed to deploy the different language resources, including vocabulary, key vocabulary of the input of the text, and the key grammar point of the text as well, and different IDs. Thank you very much for these interventions. They actually do really pour into our objective.
All right, so let me share with you some other comments. Jafar said, talk about their immediate environment. How was it before? And Wahiba said, input can be the teacher who tells about her last holiday. And Zainab said, give them some passage written in past tense and then giving them a new activity. Sarah said, you can ask them to talk about their childhood memory. And Zainab also said maybe they will be able to respond to a better way. Another amazing comment by Zainab, I wanted to share it with you. It was a great session which helped us understand how important it is for the instructors to keep adapting and keep updating themselves with the latest strategies to make learning process easier and more effective. And I do agree with her, and I thank you for your informative and insightful, great presentation. Despite your busy calendar, and thank you very much for your collaboration.
All the pleasure is mine. Thank you, all of you. Thank you for ELTA for your invitation and consideration. Thanks a lot for the participants for their devotedness. Their presence here shows that they deserve more than all what we've been doing, and it is mainly because of their interest into the field and because of the importance and holiness of their role, in which we believe truly from the depth of the heart that we do always answer positively calls for support of teachers. And maybe a last thing to add is that if we come here to support teachers, it's not actually to teach people, but to learn from them, because sharing one's visions, views, and ideas with practitioners gets them really sharp and good. So I'd like also to be very thankful for everybody for their very precious attention, precious time as well, and for their participation and for their questions, which could really shape my thinking at the same time. Thank you very much, everybody. If anything else, I'm still here with you until you free me.
So thank you very much on the behalf of the ELTA Virtual University team. I would really thank you for your presentation. Thank you very much. It was an interesting and fruitful discussion. There was very interesting intervention, inspiring question and answer on the chat thread. At the same time, I want to say most of the topics that we have, which were kind of subtopics here, we have already dealt with some of them, and we have recording of our webinars on our Facebook page. You can just follow it if you are really interested, and you can check them and re-watch them to get the benefits. Once more again, I kindly I address you to check your names before leaving the chat. Check them on the participant list. If you don't find your name, just try to log out and log in again with your correct full name as you wish to be as you wish it to be on your certificate, because we are going to award. We want to have it correct. Full names on the certificate of attendance that you will be receiving during the week before next webinar. I'm sorry to inform you that we won't be collecting your names from the chat thread. We will get them directly from the participant list. So we make sure that we have correct full name on the certificate that will be awarded to you. Thank you for your participation, for your question today. Looking forward to meet you next webinar with a new session, with a new speaker to share his experience in ELT. You can also follow us on Facebook page to stay up to date. Thank you again, and have a great day. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you.